The Duffer brothers promised a lot for the final season of Stranger Things, and they definitely delivered. I think this is the best season so far, and I'm glad the wait was worth it. The whole season tied together perfectly, introducing the plot and the new challenges the characters needed to face, and that ending was just perfect. Although I kind of expected Will to gain powers related to controlling the Demogorgons, I didn't expect him to be this badass. How are we supposed to wait a whole month after seeing this? I swear this month is going to be pure agony, but in this video, I won't talk about that. In this video, I want to talk about the reason why Henry got scared and didn't chase Max into the cave. Immediately when I saw this scene, I knew why Henry was so frightened. And this is actually key to understanding the events that will happen in Volume 2. This also explains how Will developed telekinetic powers similar to Vecna's. All the answers have already been covered in one of my recent videos, in which I discuss the origin of Henry's powers. If you've seen that video, you already know the direction this video is heading. Again, all the information presented here comes from the Stranger Things Broadway play, The First Shadow. If people didn't acknowledge its importance until now, I think this season proves them wrong. The play focuses on Henry Creel's life and provides answers to the question, why didn't Henry follow Max into the canyon? The play starts with a secret US experiment called Project Philadelphia, in which they tried to make the ship USS Eldridge invisible. But the project went in a completely wrong direction. Instead of becoming invisible, the ship was transported into another dimension called Dimension X. When the ship returned, all the crew members were killed by Demogorgons except for the captain, Captain Brenner, who is Martin Brenner's father. After his return, Captain Brenner was very sick, and his body refused any blood transfusions because the time he spent in that dimension had altered his blood type. On his deathbed, Captain Brenner told his son what really happened to the ship. Years later, Martin Brenner is in charge of the Nevada experiment, which tried to replicate what had happened with the USS Eldridge. But one of the staff members stole an important piece of equipment and hid inside a cave in Nevada. This is where a young Henry Creel comes into play. Henry's family lived in Nevada at the time, and one day Henry was exploring one of those caves. Unfortunately for Henry, he encountered the staff member who had stolen the equipment, and when the two met, the equipment malfunctioned and transported both of them into Dimension X. After 12 hours, Henry returned to the real world, but his blood was altered and his personality had changed. The other staff member was killed in Dimension X. After this incident, the Creel family moved to Hawkins. Dr. Brenner found the missing equipment in the cave, and nearby, he also found a spyglass that belonged to Henry. Using the spyglass, Brenner ultimately managed to locate Henry in Hawkins, and later used him as a test subject. As we can see, both Henry and Captain Brenner had their blood altered when they returned home. This is the reason Henry gained his powers in the first place. It's still uncertain whether the time spent in Dimension X directly gave him the powers or if the Mind Flayer infused its particles into Henry, which allowed him to unlock them. I think this will be revealed in Season 5, and it will likely represent the climax of the finale. This is also the reason Will gained powers, and I'll explain that as well. If you only watched the show and had no idea about the play, things might get a little confusing. In the show, we learned that after Henry was defeated by 11 in the lab, he was teleported to a new world, a world untouched by humans. In that world, he encounters the Mind Flayer and shapes it into the spider form we know. The show implies that this was the first time Henry arrived there, and that he is in control of the Mind Flayer. But the play directly contradicts all of that, saying that Henry had already been in Dimension X as a child, and that the Mind Flayer is actually the one who controls Vecna, not the other way around. In my opinion, the correct order of events is the one presented in the play. Henry didn't remember his experience in Dimension X as a child because his mind purposefully made him forget it. Much like Eleven's mind blocks the memories of the massacre at the lab. It was such a traumatic experience that his mind decided it was better for him not to remember. But as in Eleven's case, the memory is still there, trapped beneath layers of other memories. This is a direct parallel to what happened in Season 4, when Eleven wanted to regain her powers and Brenner gradually reintroduced her to her memories. Brenner didn't start by showing her the massacre night directly, because he knew her mind still couldn't process all that trauma. He had to break down her resistance, memory by memory. Now here's the big reveal. The reason Henry was so afraid to enter the cave is that the cave was the exact place where he was first teleported into Dimension X as a child. If you do a quick Google search for Nevada caves, you'll see it resembles Max's home perfectly. This is why Henry couldn't enter. His mind was too traumatized to face that memory again. Instead of allowing him to confront what happened, his mind froze him in place, preventing him from taking control of his past. Max confirmed that the place where she and Holly are trapped exists inside Henry's memory, and we saw some of those memories when Max tried to escape. She saw the laboratory massacre and saw Henry as a college student. That's how she knew she was inside Henry's memory. So everything that happens there occurs inside Henry's mindscape. For those unfamiliar with the concept, the mindscape is a psychic terrain, an aspect of Vecna's mind. It was apparently created by Vecna sometime between 1979 and 1986. The terrain is cloaked in scarlet light and populated with versions of the Upside Down's vines, with a fragmented version of the Creel house at its center. This is the exact same place Will saw when he spied on the Demogorgon. It's also the place he drew on the wall, the center location where all the child sacrifices were taken. Let me know if you want a separate video dedicated to this subject because there's a lot to cover, and I'm sure it will play a big role in the final part of the series. Going back, as I said, everything happens inside Henry's mind. The nice Creel house where Holly is brought is also part of this mindscape. It was designed to make the children feel safe and remain there, while their real bodies are used for Vecna's malevolent plan. The reason Henry told Holly not to wander in the woods is that he knew Max was out there and could ruin his plan. Because it's inside Henry's mind, Max doesn't have any powers there. She's just trapped. The difference is that Max could wake up because her body is still in the real world. We saw how close she was to returning. It was a really sweet moment, seeing Lucas caring for her after all this time. And I'm sure that's the main reason Max chose not to kill herself, and instead chose option 2. So, because Max doesn't have any powers there, she needed a method to reach Holly and drew her into that place. Think of the map that Max drew. That map represents the layers of Henry's mind. The Creel house is the first layer, where everything is good and happy. The next layer is the playfield, followed by the forest, and finally the last layer, the stones. The stones represent the deepest layer of Henry's mind, the one that is truly traumatic for him. Even if Henry's mind made him forget what happened in that cave, his body remembers. No matter what he wants, he cannot get rid of that memory. It's exactly the same thing that happened to Eleven. Think of all the memories that Brenner made Eleven go through as the layers through which Holly travels. The first night in the lab is the Creel house. The day when Eleven defeated number 2 in a contest is the forest. And so on until we reach the deepest layer. For Eleven, it's the night of the massacre. For Henry, it's what happened in that cave. Back in Season 4, we saw what happened to Eleven's body when Brenner forced her to remember. Her body suddenly went into shock because her mind refused to accept it. This is exactly why Henry didn't follow Max into the cave. His body couldn't move because his mind refused to acknowledge the experience. Everything ties back to what happened to Henry when he was a little child. Maybe this is why he targeted weak children in body and mind between the ages of 9 and 10. It could be because that's exactly what happened to him. He was that age when he was transported to Dimension X, and he saw himself as a weak child. Maybe this is the real pattern through which Vecna operates. Now, regarding Will's powers, I believe there's a simple explanation. We know that Henry gained his powers due to his exposure to Dimension X. We also know that other test subjects gained powers because they were infected with Henry's blood. Eleven's mother participated in the MK Ultra project while she was pregnant. During that time, she was injected with Henry's blood, which is why she and Eleven developed powers. I explained this in more depth in one of my previous videos, so be sure to check that out as well. As we can see, the conditions for gaining powers are either exposure to Dimension X or exposure to Henry's blood, which is basically the same thing. And we saw in the first 5 minutes of the show that Will had a vine attached to him. I believe it was through that vine that he was infected with the same energy that gave Henry his powers, but Will never tapped into them. He believed he was a victim and couldn't harness that power for good. It was only because of Mike's idea suggesting that he could use those powers instead of being a victim. But the key element that was missing was Robin's speech. I swear that moment was so heartwarming. For me, Robin was the character I loved the most in this volume. Especially the part where she talked with Joyce, saying it only sounded mean because of her tone. That cracked me up. It was Robin's speech that made Will accept who he truly was, to accept the love he has for Mike, and to stop running from his feelings. Will's journey, especially in Season 4, was a constant battle with his feelings for Mike. He knew he loved him, but he also believed it was morally wrong, and he was trying to suppress that part of himself. Once he accepted his full self and realized he had nothing to be ashamed of, He was able to tap into those powers and save the day. And man, the way he did it, pure aura farm, killing those demogorgons in Vecna's style after Henry mocked him, absolute cinematography. I hope this helped you understand why Henry didn't chase Max through the cave. It's because he was traumatized by the events that happened to him as a child. I really cannot wait for the next volume, and I think this will be explained in more depth. Hopefully, you now have a clear understanding of why things happen this way. If you have any other questions, feel free to ask them in the comments, and I'll do my best to answer all of them.